is it possible for someone like me to have the wounds, the rejection, the pain, the trauma that has history of panic attacks for the majority of my life? Is it possible for someone like me to be transformed by the renewing of my mind?
Welcome back, Fresh Leadership community, to the Fresh Leadership Podcast. We're so grateful that you're joining us today. We are a podcast that's all about having fresh conversations with fresh perspectives from fresh voices. And we're in season 1 of this podcast. And season 1 is focused all about forming habits. And today we've invited a very special voice and friend into the conversation, our friend Jason Yost, who is a habit king and has some habit hacks that we're excited to share with you today. So Jason, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Yeah, Jason, we're excited to have you, man. And I want to introduce Jason real quick. Jason is a friend of mine, a personal friend. Jason is one of those people that when you sit across the table from him, will look you in the eyes, almost like he's looking into your soul. You know, it's like,
but in a good way, not creepy way.
Yeah. and he asks the most amazing questions and he listens so deeply.
Yeah.
I feel so cared about, seen, loved, just valued when I'm around Jason. Jason's one of those guys that checks in on me very regularly just to ask how I'm doing, how he can be praying. He's the real deal. And Jason and his wife, Shelly, are parents, authors, health enthusiasts, digital marketers, speakers, educators, business owners, dreamers, coaches, and the world's most wonder-filled humans. I love that. Jason has led worship and been on staff at Mark Batterson's church in Washington, D.C., at Liquid Church. He's worked for Samaritan's Purse, and he has worked all over the place, and he's going to share his wealth of wisdom with you today. Jason, welcome to the podcast.
Oh my gosh, you guys, I'm so excited to be here with you. And I was just thinking, I was like, oh my gosh, I need to go for a minute because I need to go find this Jason that you're introducing. Amazing. That was so rad. I love it, man. I appreciate that. I appreciate our friendship and the opportunity just to share today. And it's going to be good. I'm excited.
Anything to add to your bio that we missed, or anything a part of your bio that maybe you want to unpack a little bit, like the world's most wonder-filled human? Anything like that you want to?
Oh man, that's so true. That's one of the things that just gets me up in the morning is just wonder, the wonder of God. We're very much a wonder-filled family. My girls are 10 and 8 years old. They're in elementary school. And you could say only 2 of us are clinically diagnosed, but you could say we're a family of ADDers. And so we wonder a lot and we travel a lot. We've been on 100-day RV trips just for fun to check out the coast and to meet people. We've been, taking them on trips just to different places in Punta Cana, just to meet new cultures and languages. My daughter, we were just talking about this yesterday. My daughter's 8 years old and her preference of food is like Korean sweet potato glass noodles and sushi.
Okay, she's cultured.
So I need to hang out with her, because that is right up my alley. That sounds so good.
I know. I love it so much, but it ain't cheap, fellas.
You've been cultivating a certain level of taste in her taste buds.
Yeah. We didn't think about that part.
That's awesome.
That's so much fun. And Jason, what we would just love for you to share a little bit is a little bit about your bio, your story in particular, of how you got into the neuroscience around gratitude, what led you there. I remember even reading some things that I've seen that you've put out and that I personally resonate with where I'm at right now. I know that you mentioned even just your dad dying being a huge part of that story. And my dad just died a few months ago. So initially, like, I read that and I'm in. Like, okay, a guy that's able to practice gratitude through some of the worst heartbreak that I am resonating with a lot right now as well. And I'm sure that some of our listeners, even if it's not a dad, varying levels of pain that just happen from life in general, and choosing gratitude in that. And that's a very intentional choice. So I'd love it if you just can share a little bit about your origin story, as John and I have called it, a little bit into what brought you into this.
Yeah, man. And so sorry to hear about your dad as well. Yeah. And I'm glad that we can connect, even, John, for connecting us, and we can stay connected and walk through healing together.
Amen.
But one of the things, honestly, guys, that as I reflect on is I had about a life transformation. It was probably about 5.5 years ago at this point. I had, for my whole life, I had worked in full-time church staff. And I was at a place where researchers actually say that most of our lives throughout the day, we're actually in 60% subconscious living. Isn't that crazy?
Wow.
Where we can just move through life and we don't think of it anymore, just because it's a pattern, and it can become so easy at times. And for me in my life at certain time, everything was easy. I had, if you look at mind, body, and soul, my soul was good. The habits that matched my soul was good. I had been in church. I didn't grow up in church. I didn't understand a relationship with Jesus or anything about church until I was about 16. And then from there, I started leading worship in church. I was enamored by the music, and I had became a worship pastor and did that up until 35. And I was at a place in my life where I was having kids. And as you get older, mid-30s, as you approach that, whoever's in there, it's coming for you. As you're getting older, you just start to think and you reminisce, like you ask questions. When life events happen, you ask questions. And I just started asking myself questions. What do I want? What am I doing? I noticed that with the mind, body, and soul, I was good with the soul, but my mind wasn't great and my body was not great. And so I didn't at the time know anything about my mind. So this is the origin of it. I didn't know that you could change your mind, and we'll talk about that in a little bit.
Wow.
You could actually change some of the way that you think, which is going to change your life. And so I just focused on my physical health. And I got, I'm 5'9", fellas. I was 240 pounds at my heaviest. And just the act of doing that, it took me about 5 months to get serious and to get focused. And that helped me think, okay, I got some self-esteem now, because I had a thought in my mind and I visualized something like, can I do this? Could I create this Jason that I'm thinking of? And then I actually put some habits to it. Right. And then I got the result I wanted. And so then, as I was about, honestly, 4 or 5 months into my health journey, I received a phone call that my dad had just taken his life.
Oh, and I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it was one of the hardest phone calls that I've ever had to receive. Of course, your psyche isn't ready for it, so it took a while to sink in. But in my certain situation, I didn't grow up very close with my dad as I was a child and a student in school. And then later on in life, it was even to a point where there was a few years where I didn't even know where he lived. We didn't connect at all. And then as I got older, we had connected. I went and I searched him out. I went and found him, went to his work, his job, knocked on his door, and was just trying to grow in relationship with him, And as I was at that point, I think I was in my late 20s, mid 20s. And we were growing closer in relationship. I got married. We were growing closer. He was at my wedding. Then I had kids, And again, as life events happen, you start to ask yourself questions and things that weren't on your radar before, or your reticulator activating system that Batterson likes to say. When they weren't there before, they start to be. And, we were growing close together, and he just started struggling in his physical health and in his mental health. And he was quiet about it. And we didn't actually live geographically close together. So he was able to, hide from my brother and I some things, I guess, that were really going on inside of him. And, guys, it was I remember it just at a place in my basement, and, you know, the funeral was over with, and all of the things that happen afterwards that kind of get your adrenaline going. You're like, you feel it, then you don't feel it, you know, and then when everybody goes home and people stop, you know, texting you or calling, you know, you're kind of there by yourself. You have a moment, and your mind and your body, the cortisol kind of just flushes out. And so now you're in a safe place. And then you start to feel some things that are out of your control, that you need to feel, that you need to process, but it can be scary, you know? And I was thinking to myself, man, I've got, I was just recently reading about epigenetics, and it's just the idea of that things, you know, our DNA changes, things about us changes through our environment and the way that we were raised, and our DNA and our heredity. And, you know, I was just thinking, what am I up against here? This is my blood. This is my dad. I had my whole life. I've struggled with anxiety, pretty crippling anxiety at times. I actually dropped out of high school for a period of time because I would just have panic attacks every day in school.
Wow.
And I tried to medicate it, and tried to, you know, just not talk about it and just be quiet about it. And it just bothered me, and suffered from, you know, depression at times as well in my life. And so all of this started coming back to me. And I just honestly thought, guys, like, hey, is this coming for me? Like, is this what I have to look forward to?
Yeah.
You know, my dad he had just turned 60. And I just was nervous and scared, and I didn't know what to do. And again, I got the physical part. And so I was like, I'm never going back to 240 again. I'm not going there, because I can see how that can bring me the life that I do not want to lead towards. The spiritual part, it was there. I was doing habits in both of those areas. And then the mental part, I didn't know what the habits were. I thought that I was dealt a deck of cards, and I had to play with those. I'm not a poker guy, but you know, it's super exciting. I'm just not a poker guy, again, because I have ADD. I can't sit there long enough to worry about these cards with numbers on them and all that stuff. However, little that I do know, when you're playing like 5-card or Texas Hold'em, you can get rid of some cards and you can get some other ones. Right. And so what I started to learn is, I wondered, that's why I'm a wondered-filled human. I wondered, is it possible for someone like me to have the wounds, the rejection, the pain, the trauma, that has history of panic attacks for the majority of my life? Is it possible for someone like me to be transformed by the renewing of my mind, to actually be transformed by the renewing of my mind? Not hear a pastor tell me it, not read it in the Bible, but is it possible that I could be transformed by the renewing of my mind? And I just thought, Jay, you got two choices. You can just be depressed, get fat, not be involved in your kid's life, not give Shelly the best of you, and see what happens when you turn 60, or you can just go in a completely different direction, and you can figure things out. And thank God that's what I went with. And so the first thing that I did, and I'll just say this, and then you can ask me another question. But honestly, the first thing that I did the next morning is I started to Google.
And it led you to being an expert in the habit of gratitude.
Totally.
How crazy.
The first thing that I found out is, you guys may have heard of Mel Robbins.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So Mel Robbins, she's like a mindset guru, like a coach. And she had this free YouTube thing, and I just started to I'm a Enneagram 5, by the way, if you guys speak that language, and any of the listeners speak that language. So I can literally, I go after information. I mean, I'd sit all day and read about, gratitude, neuroscience, but she just had this free thing. I signed up for it, and she would email me once a day, it was like a 14-day mindset reset. And she talked about a morning routine, and she talked about gratitude, and she talked about how to assume the best in people. And she talked about how to forgive people, and how to think ahead about your day instead of just living in subconscious reactive mode. I had never heard this stuff in my life, and so honestly, I just started doing it. I wasn't telling anybody about it. I just started doing it. My wife and I started getting up early. We started doing some habits, some mental habits so that we could put that mind, body, soul together with habits. And it just started to transform our lives. And that was, that was literally 5 years ago, learning that and starting to put those to practice.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking about our listeners right now, Jason, who probably, there's some that are facing anxiety, maybe depression runs in their family. Maybe they are facing some really tough news or some hard life stuff right now. Thank you for sharing your story. I think it just helps for all of us listening to know that we're not alone.
Yeah.
And if you're out there listening, today's a divine appointment for you. There's some really practical tools that Jason's going to give you. And so I'm excited that he gets to share that. But I just wanted to just pause a moment and just say thanks for your vulnerability, because I think sometimes with leadership podcasts, we can think that the person on the other side of the mic is an expert because they never went through anything bad. They're an expert because life has always been great for them. And that's just not the case. I think we grow through pain, right? Like working out in the weight room. It's through the ripping and the tearing and the stretching of the muscle fibers that growth happens. And so I just say to you prophetically, who are listening on the other side of this podcast, it's a growth season for you.
Yep.
Get ready for growth. If you will lean in, this is a growth season for you, just like it was for Jason. Jason, unpack a little bit of the neuroscience. I geek out over neuroscience. I'm a learner like you. I research stuff. So first of all, help us understand what neuroscience means for maybe some of the listeners that have no idea. Maybe you're going to create some new neuroscience geeks as a result of this. And then help us understand the neuroscience behind gratitude a little bit. Just unpack that for us just in a couple of minutes.
Yeah, for sure. That's good that you said a couple of minutes, because we could be here all day with this.
Yeah, stuff. Right. Yeah, we spent a lot of time.
Oh my gosh, I love it. The way that I like to simply talk about it, to simplify it, is, neuroscience is basically just the science of how your brain works, of all the inner workings and intricacies of how they work. And this has been such healing for me to begin with. And I'm gonna land where you told me to land. But it's incredible, the foundations of the creation that God has made inside of us. Oh my God. When I started studying the brain, just because I thought it was fun, holy cow, you have more reasons to worship and to praise and to be like, right, good deal. There's so much I don't know that God is so incredibly amazing. I was reading, one of the things I've been reading is the Passion version. It's a new version in the Bible. And so it has like the New Testament, then it has some Psalms. And just this morning I read in Psalm 23, or Psalm 138, that's the verse where it talks about, you knit me and formed me in my mother's womb perfectly. And the sentence that it said there was like, I praise you because I am mysteriously and so complexly made, or whatever. And I was like, that's so good. True. But the science behind of how your brain works is, once you figure out kind of what the ingredients are that you need throughout your day to help you feel good and to help you have some health. I call it mental hygiene, physical hygiene, because we talked about them in school.
Yeah. Well, now not everyone does.
Yeah. Well, yeah. You may know it, but you don't practice it.
Yeah. Come on. Put on some deodorant, people.
Yeah. One week at middle school camp.
Yeah.
Holy cow. Yes.
I'm sorry. We got you off track.
That's another podcast. That's habits, physical hygiene habits.
Take a shower.
But there's so much. You think of this, guys. So this is the easy way to put it. I know you've heard, like, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. You've heard, like, hey, if you're going to learn something, you have to learn something by the 3rd grade, or you're not going to learn it. That's done with today, right? There's something called neuroplasticity, which actually means that our brains were created in such a way that it has continual growth. Okay. So no matter how old you are, no matter what you think you know, what you think you don't know, you can literally learn anything you want to with the right habits and the right intention. which is incredible. And so what happens with us in our minds, and again, I get so excited about this, so I'm trying to stay on track, I promise. What happens in our minds is we have these thoughts, and think of them as like highways. We're all driving on highways. We got to get to our destination. And so in our brains, they're called dendrites, our thoughts, which think of them as like pathways. We have neural pathways that as we think, we're kind of paving the roads of these pathways.
Yep, love that.
So the more you drive from home to work, the more you know. You're driving there, you don't have to think you can move into subconscious mode, right? Because it's paved now. You've done it so many times, okay?
Yeah.
Which is fine. It's until it's not. And so, for instance, if you have anxious thoughts or you have ruminating depression or negativity, as you're in depression, that's where rumination comes from. You're thinking of negative thoughts over and over and over again. You've unfortunately paved that road. Does that make sense? You've paved that path. And so it's easy, just naturally now, it's easy for you to take that exit because you've created that neural pathway. And the more that you continue to do that, specifically, that's what anxiety is. It's just ruminating thoughts in the same direction. That's negativity.
Whoa. Wow.
And so what happens is when you're anxious, God made us in a way that when we are anxious, our brains communicate to our bodies to release a chemical called cortisol, which you need some of that to help you determine whether you're safe or whether you're not. However, if you have too much of it, then you start to act like a reptile, which is how the cavemen acted. Because every single day, as you went out and went about your day, you needed to look over your shoulder always so you weren't eaten by a T-Rex or what have you. I'm being funny.
Right. Sure.
But you know what I'm saying? You're in survival mode. And so you're constantly have cortisol rising. And so now we don't live like that. We don't need to live like that. However, naturally, and I'm this way, we continue to go to that reptile brain, right? When you think, I mean, for me, I was scared to go to school because I was ruminating it so much. My brain was getting so used to that pathway. I just took that exit every day. So now I had paved that so much, it was just easy for me to say, school's not safe. I'm not going to be safe when I go to school. I'm not going to be safe. I'm not going to be able to do that. If I go to class, I'm going to have a panic attack. I'm going to have a panic attack. If I go here, I'm going to have a panic attack. And so then cortisol is released. Then you have sweat, you're hot, you're sweating, your heart is racing. You feel, you are getting a burst of adrenaline, which helps you in fight or flight so that you can fight or flight, except you don't need it because you've created it here. Does that make sense?
Wow.
So you're in a moment that you have created a visualization of needing the fight or flight, which is how God created us so that we could protect ourselves and we could do that, except you're not in a situation where you need it. And so the more that you do that, which was my case, and a lot of cases that have, anxiety and severe anxiety, is you get yourself into that mode. And then what you have to do, thank God for neuroplasticity. Thank God for gratitude, which we'll talk about. You have the ability, by the grace of God and the power of God, you have the ability to actually break up that road. That pathway that you've created, and you can create a brand new exit, whatever exit you want to take. You can do that. It takes work and it takes time, but it has to be habits to get through that. And so that's the main thing is to understand is that God has designed us in a way where all of these things are working together for our good, but there are times where trauma sets in, where just tough seasons, walking through the desert, that happens. And so we have to keep these habits in place in order to sustain our mental hygiene, our spiritual hygiene, mental hygiene, and physical hygiene. And that's part of the thing. Unfortunately, guys, which is why I'm so passionate about this. I didn't learn that part in the church. I learned the spiritual part. I learned the prayer part. I learned that, but I didn't learn kind of the mental habits. that you put together, I like to call it, and we talked about this a little bit, when you add hope and you add habits, then you get your healing. You get towards healing.
Wow.
And
so good, Jason.
I just want to share that more with people and just let them know that there's hope out there. And when you match your hope with your habits, you're going to get to your healing.
Yeah, this is why, as you guys can tell, why we were excited to bring Jason to you today. Because the truth is and why this is the heartbeat behind the Fresh Leadership Podcast.
Correct.
We want to bring you fresh conversations that aren't necessarily being talked about in the circles that you run in, maybe in church. I think it should be, because we serve the God of the universe, the creator who made our minds and made neuroscience. We geek out of it because he's the one who created it. We're just celebrating him more by talking about this. We're worshiping him by understanding this part of our being and then utilizing the tools that he's given us. Yeah. So good. Thank you for sharing that. That's super helpful. I'm excited to jump into the practical part of it.
Yes, because I know what some of our listeners might be thinking right now, if they haven't already shut off this podcast and be like, I'm canceling him because he doesn't understand my issues right now. Now, hold on just a little bit longer, because I believe that there's practical things coming right now that can really help you. And as he mentioned, hope and habits, your healing's on the way. So thank you for the hope that you've given us already and showing this is possible. Yeah, this totally is possible. Yeah. And before you count yourself out, let's maybe try some of these gratitude practices that Jason has, because they might be thinking, gratitude, like, seriously, man, that is what's going to change my predicament. And I was one of those people too. Again, just so much as you're sharing, I'm like, I get that story. I get that. Like, not apples to apples, but we're in the same fruit basket for sure. So I'm like, I get that. Now, tell us a little bit about gratitude and what that does. Again, just on the topic of neuroscience, and then just quickly explain that, and then maybe just a few practical points that we can give our listeners today.
Yeah, and I want to add to that, Jason. I think probably the majority of the people here listening are busy. Yes. They have a lot going on in their lives. I'm just guessing. So I love these hacks because Rob and I are beneficiaries of this before we're sharing it with everybody else. We got a preview. I love these because they fit in everyday busy life. They fit with leaders who have a lot going on. So these hacks are really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the biggest things that scientists and researchers have shown, I would, in the last decade or less, this is kind of new. This is new information again, because at first we thought, hey, once you're in third grade, you're not learning anything. Once you're here, that type of stuff. Yeah. Just the idea of neuroplasticity and being able to continue to grow and to learn is a new thing. And gratitude has been claimed as one of the strongest and potent and effective antidepressant, like on the face of creation, on the face of the earth.
Wait, hold on a second. Pause. Even stronger than some of the medications, pharmaceutical options and treatments out there. Yes. Is what you shared. Research shows.
Research shows that, yes. And
it's almost as if God knew what he was doing.
I know, and it's amazing. And I'll say, and I'd like to share this to normalize this. I continue, even right now, I take anxiety medication and I take antidepressants.
Thank you for sharing.
And I match that with a healthy diet. I match that with exercise, with mental hygiene. All of those have helped me find my healing.
Yeah, correct. For sharing.
We are not anti-medication.
Yeah. I was in a place mentally where I was not capable. Things weren't firing on all cylinders because of the trauma that I had endured, and I needed it. And then just realize that for me, everybody's situation different. So I got prescribed something. I'm not prescribing this to anyone. I'm just describing what happened to me.
Yeah,
it was understood that this is something that I'll continue to need, not as a high a dose as I needed at the time, but that's part of the healing process as well. That
come on, man.
Shelley and I are very pro about that as well.
Congrats. That's awesome.
So yes, thank you. So gratitude came in, and I will say gratitude. And so there you go. Firsthand knowledge. I've been on those meds for almost 2 decades. And once I started tapping into gratitude, it took me to a whole new level. I promise you.
Yeah, I love that.
And so how this happens is we have, say, four neurotransmitters. They're happy chemicals. You have serotonin, which is what you get when kind of you're exercising and you're out in the sun and, you're feeling good. Oxytocin, that's one that you get when you're with people in community, or you give somebody a hug, or you're petting a dog, that's feeling good chemicals. And then you have your dopamine, which is kind of get stuff done chemical, which there's also a synthetic dopamine, which we can talk about on another podcast, which is why screens are destroying our mental hygiene. And then you have the endorphins that happen, which is when you're working out and you're pumping those things. So once you find out, and which I have some materials and stuff on this as we connect, once you find out how you actually get these chemicals, and most of them, all of them are free, you can change the way you think, you can change how you feel, you can set up how you feel. There were things that I did today because I knew that you and I would be talking, so that I would become my best self at 2:00 in the afternoon at my time. There were some things that I made sure I didn't do prior to our conversation so that it wouldn't mentally throw me off or distract me. So gratitude is something that actually has been proven to grow the brain. When you practice gratitude, there was a study in UCLA where they took students, they had an A and a B. They had these students practice it for a semester. They had these students not. And they actually measured their brains. The students that practiced gratitude, their brains actually grew. The molecular structure of their brain kind of stretched, which again comes to that neuroplasticity. So what's happening is when you move towards gratitude, and basically that is just your thinking, intentionally thinking about what you're thankful for, what you're happy about, what is here right now. What can I hear that is awesome? What can I smell that's awesome? What can I taste? It's where, whatever you are, you're putting yourself in a position where you're releasing those happy chemicals. Because here's another thing, when you visualize something, your brain doesn't know the difference between reality and visualization. And again, that's why anxiety and different things can be so powerful, because the more that you ruminate, the more that you're visualizing, your brain is giving you that, even though it's not happening, which is where the panic attacks come in, right? But what's cool is you can do it the other way too. And that's what gratitude does, right? And so when you start to pour in gratitude daily in your life, the result that you're going to get is peace, calm, happiness, humility, love, joy, gentleness, faithfulness, self-control. You know where I'm going with all those?
Yep.
The fruit.
Yes, exactly. And here's the deal. It's kind of medication. High potent medication, but as you're taking it, it's not like an immediate thing. It takes some time to go through your body. You're reaping and sowing, right? And so when you're developing gratitude, you want to develop a practice of gratitude, continually doing that so that you're pouring in those happy chemicals in your life. And it really just gets you to a place where you're not kind of looking at your situation or life like this, like in survival mode, and more of like, okay, what can I be grateful for today? And as I'll start to move into some of the practicalities.
Yeah, thank you so much.
One of the things that I did, and what I would encourage everyone to do, now what I'm going to say too is this. So common knowledge isn't always common practice.
True.
Wow.
And that's part of the problem. So what I'm going to share right now is going to sound so simple, you may not even take me seriously. But that's what I want to share, is that common knowledge isn't always common practice. If you take my word for this and you start to actually practice these things and not be like, oh, I've heard that before. But if you put these things into practice, they will transform your life. So I'm telling you, if tomorrow morning you wake up and you write down 3 things that you're grateful for, what happens is from the outset of your day, you're beginning to set your mind in motion, right? To start thinking about what you can be grateful for.
You took the exit onto the new neural pathway, the new superhighway. Come on,
right? So
I love it.
If I wake up and I just go about my day in that subconscious mode, whatever sign I see, I'm going.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, I'm nervous. You know what I mean? Like I got to fly. What if it's boom, I'm taking that, right? But if I start my day with gratitude, then it triggers your reticular activating system that's in your prefrontal cortex. You guys, let's talk about this, right? You look at thinking about a new car and you're like, hey, I want that new red Toyota Sequoia with the black wheels, and it's all, just I was going to say pimped out, but I didn't mean, it looks really good.
Midnight edition, nice.
There you go. Midnight.
I see MTV product from back
there
in the day.
Go.
Pimp My Ride.
I know,
right?
Listeners on this podcast,
is the Young Leaders
what
podcast.
Are they talking about?
What the what?
Pimp My Ride. Yo, I love that show.
Okay, I know, it's amazing. So I'm sure there's Toyota Sequoias in your guys' neighborhood, but you're not going to see them until this afternoon because I just said it. Right. And you're going to think red Toyota Sequoia. And you begin to see, when you're searching for cars, you see that. And then you're like, oh my gosh, everybody has this car. Everybody sees that. It's the same thing, except we're using our brain. We're paving new neural pathways. So instead of anxious, depressive thoughts that aren't serving us, limiting beliefs, that aren't serving us to be the person we want to be, we turn this way, which is a little bit like repentance, right? We're making a 180 and we're heading in a different direction and intentionally doing that. Now, you don't pave a road in a day, right? It takes time.
Yeah.
It takes, you got to do this, and then there's that, and then you continue to do that. But if you can just literally wake up, write down, type down, do it in your notes, whatever it is, you find the workflow. That part's not important. Getting it down is important. Don't just think it, but writing it down and actually typing it down, it can begin to change neural pathways in your life. And for me, honestly, it started with like, I'm looking, because we don't normally do this, right? We wake up and we got to go. We got to get going. We got to do this. What are the threats today? What's going to happen? That's going to, that type of deal. And I would just look and I'd be like, man, this coffee right here. I love coffee. This tastes so good. Thank you, God, for this. I'd write that down. And I'd be like, you know what? It's a fall. Like the leaves are yellow right now and red and green.
Come on,
Thank
somebody.
you, God, for this. Thank you for, what I mean? And I get to the point, guys, as I start to do this in my life, and I say, God, thank you for the situation that happened with my dad. Wow. Because I never would have found this place that I am in myself and in you.
Wow.
I never could have done that 5.5 years ago. Right? And then you're reminded that God works the good of all the things that happen. God can work it for good for those that love him and are called to his purposes.
Come on.
And you just start to see things. And it's very similar to Philippians, what I'm telling you. Think of things that are pure. Yeah, think of things that are just. Think of things that are noble. And I'm just saying, because we're so busy, right, throughout our day, we're not intentionally going to do that. It's going to be way easier to move into subconscious mode 60% of our lives, instead of getting up maybe 5 minutes earlier before you get in the shower, before you go out the door, and writing down from the outset of your day 3 things. I do 5 now. I worked up to it. So 3 things that you can be grateful for. And then here's another one. Did you guys want to ask anything?
Yeah, I want to just pause on that real practically because I went through a time, I wasn't clinically diagnosed, but I went through a time of depression, really dark, post-surgery. I think some of it was medication induced.
Yeah.
As I had 5 surgeries in 1 year, where I was in some really dark, hard places, and gratitude journaling was crucial. That scripture that you mentioned from Philippians 4:6-8, I was reading it every single day.
Yeah.
Every single day. And then I was gratitude journaling. So for months and months, I would read that and I would gratitude journal. Some days I wasn't feeling super grateful. Like I remember some days I would journal. My gratitude was the same as the day before and the day before that. You know, thank you for my wife. Thank you for my girls. Thank you for the breath in my lungs. you know, and it's like, is even that, is that okay? If we don't feel like extra grateful today, or we're struggling for whatever reason to find things to be grateful for, is that okay to even go to those things, the same things?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's where the habits come in. And they work with the hope, because if you hope, you know, that's not a great plan. That's going to be helpful, but without the habits, it's going to be hard for that hope to come into fulfillment. Right.
Yep.
And so when you're in those places, that's when you lean on the hope side. Like, you just need God's help because you're not feeling it. And I've been in that place even recently, and will be in that place again. You know, those comes in seasons. There's a season and time for everything. And it's important then, if you stop the habit, it's going to be very hard to get the healing and to get the result that you want, because now you're kind of lopsided. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You're just continue going back into hoping. Oh, I'm hoping, but I'm moving on. I'm hoping, I'm busy. I'm hoping, but no, I'm hoping and I got the habit. I'm hoping and I got the habit, you know? And
so it's really the act of the habit, that the doing it every single
solidifies
day. Right.
Yep.
Yeah. It's so good.
Because again, you're working against kind of years of whatever you have consciously or subconsciously programmed in your life and in your mind.
Right.
And so it just takes time to do it. And this is the scaffolding to help you get there, you know, and to help you build kind of the mind and the life that you want to have, you know.
Yeah.
And people, honestly, I want to be like people that are grateful. Before I did this, I wasn't that happy of a person. You know, it'll change your personality, you know, and that could be another podcast, because your personality is just a memory of emotions and a pattern that you've associated and agreed with for the majority of your life. And then as you start to be intentional, and as you start to write down things that you can be grateful for and things that you're happy for, it just moves you in a different direction. And then when you have the hope of the scriptures and the power of the scriptures, bro, there's nothing that is impossible.
Yeah. What a powerful combination. So every single day, one gratitude hack, every single morning, set your alarm 5 minutes early, write down 3 or 5 if you're an overachiever like Jason, things that you're grateful for. Keep the list going if you're on a roll. And you're feeling extra grateful. That's one hack. Every single one of us can do that.
Yeah.
Give us a couple other really practical ones real quick.
Absolutely. I'll give you one more. I have 3, but the third one they can get if they download the PDF.
Okay.
Yes.
Love it. And that's free.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Perfect.
But this next one, again, it's moving from subconscious living to conscious living and being intentional. And I call it pause on purpose. And so whatever, I'm going to share a time. I'm in the East Coast time. The time is irrelevant. It's the practice and your rhythm of life that helps. And so, I use my phone. I have everything on my phone. I'm sure all of us do. And in my phone, I have 2 alarms that go off every single day. The first one goes off at 11 o'clock. And the question, I have it labeled, what is something good that has happened so far? Just a question mark. So at 11 o'clock for me, I get an alarm. So whatever I'm doing, just beep, 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 it goes to it. And I have to stop for a moment and I have to think, what is something good that has happened so far today? And here's why. Number one is we as we go about our day, this just happens, we move into subconscious, right? And so we're just floating by and just kind of going in robotic mode, getting things done. This helps us, this nudges us to go back into being mindful and to being here and noticing our surroundings. But then also, you guys, all of us, whether it's been in the morning or whatever it is, something has went wrong. You had, you failed your test, or you missed your homework, or you got in a fight with your wife or significant other, or whoever. And then that one moment of the day, now your entire day you have labeled, this is a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. When really you just had a bad moment, right? So you don't have to define your day like that, because you're in charge of that. So you have the power to define that day.
Yeah.
And so you could be having an awful morning. When I have an awful morning, my kids are crazy and wacko and they're just going nuts. And I'm just like, this is not what I expected this morning. Right. At 11 o'clock, I know I'm going to have an alarm that goes, hey, Jay, I know you're not in a good place right now, but name something that's happened so far. And immediately that shift, right? It's just so helpful to do every single day. And then the next one I do at 3 o'clock. And this says, because that's kind of like my kids are coming home from school. That's when I transition. And it says, how can I finish the day well? So for me, really that 4 to 6 is like the hardest time of the day for me, right? Because it's like I had so much dopamine in the morning. I'm working, I'm excited, I got my meetings, and you know what I mean? My mind, I'm going fast, and then all of a sudden I have to shift. You know what I mean? I'm to put the other hat on, and now I'm dad, and now I've got to figure out dinner, and then I've got to do this, and it's like I'm tired because I just finished working and finish my day, but I want to give my kids the best, so it's like, do I give them the screen or do I like create an activity we can do, those types of things. So left to my subconscious or just left to figuring, just letting things happen, reactive mode, I don't have really good evenings. So this helps me right before I'm about to transition, say, hey, Jay, how can you finish the day well? Wow. So even now I'm setting intention.
I'm taking notes.
Dude, this is helping me.
All of it's free, guys. All of it.
Yeah.
Like these are free things that we can do. And it takes time and it takes intention, but it literally gives us the type of life that we want, the mind, body, and soul. These types of habits will transform, they'll transform everything for you. Yeah, and I wish to the living God, because we were talking about, the audience and listeners, guys, I wish. I just turned 40 this year. I'm about to turn 41. Dear God, if I knew this stuff in my 20s or in my late teens, oh my gosh, I would give anything, honestly, fellas.
Yeah, Jason, you mentioned getting the PDF into our hands. You mentioned to us before we hit record, you have some other tools, and I know that there's probably so much more that we can unpack that we don't have time for today, but some other tools that you just want to gift the listening audience with to kind of help them in this area because it's helped you so much. Can you just give us a quick highlight of those and where they can find those?
Yeah, absolutely. So I made a special landing page for you guys, for all the listeners. And one of the things, as I was processing through these habits on the other side, after doing them for a while and seeing the change that they had in me and how, been able to help others as well, I have created actually a mindset journal that gives you these types of promptings. It begins with gratitude, writing down, then it goes to affirmations, visualization, reflection. But these practices they're gonna help you renew your mind. They're gonna help you rewire your thoughts, but then they also give you those 4 happy chemicals throughout your day that you need, just to perform well. And so I've actually put that at it's usually I think it's usually $24.99, but I put it at $9.99. So I put it at like a lot off.
Thank you, bro.
Anybody that wants it can have it. Wow. And then my dopamine button, morning gratitude for busy go-getters. That PDF's on there as well, and that's free, and you can have that. And so, most of all, just love to stay connected. If I can do anything, one of the big passions that I have is I don't want people to wonder. I don't want them to wonder if. I want them to know it's possible.
That's so good. Well, Jason, thank you again for your time today and for your investment in our Fresh Leadership community. Yeah. From all of us, we're thankful. And just a reminder, guys, all these things that Jason just mentioned, you can find those in our podcast notes as well. We have the link provided there. And we would love to send you our friend's way for things that he's given to our community for an incredible deal. So we thank you for your generosity in that way too. It was unexpected, but we're grateful for that.
Absolutely.
But bless you so much, bro, and your family. in your endeavors as you continue to pursue this holy passion that God's placed in you. So thanks for being an example of that, and for just being such a example of hope in all this. So we're grateful.